Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Courtside with Beilinson Tennis, part of the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. We have with us back in his home state, fresh off the plane from London, where he witnessed an incredible match yesterday between Carlos Alcaraz and Novak Djokovic. Please welcome back in my co-host and Hall of Famer, Steve Flink. As you know, Steve, we will cover both finals. One I would classify as a little disheartening, and the second I would classify as absolutely enticing, and we will get into both. Steve, initial thoughts. You're still awake. I know you got the jet lag kicking in soon, so we want to get this in early.
Yeah, I think that initial thoughts. I think it was a very suspenseful, gripping men's final because there were so many fluctuations of fortune. Let's just start with the first set, where Djokovic is down break point in the opening game, in a little danger there, as he had been in the opening game of his semifinal against Sinner, but he gets out of it. The next thing you know, he's up 5-love. He completely picked Carlos Alcaraz apart. Alcaraz was a little overly adventuresome, and he overcooked a lot of forehands, and you could tell he was pressing and a bit nervous. And Novak was letter perfect. The depth on every return within a foot or two of the baseline. It was just phenomenal display on his part. So you knew how critical the second set would be.
Okay, before we get to that second set, I want to tell you about a tweet that I threw out there after the first set, because I was getting some texts from friends and I saw on social media, like, oh boy, 6-1. We were all so excited about this. This may be, one-way traffic. And I threw out the tweet: for those that choose to turn off the TV, do so at your own peril, because I think the match starts right now. And as we saw, Carlos holds the first game of the second set. Now, again, on that first set, it wasn't like the first two sets in Roland Garros where there was so much physicality. The first set of Wimbledon, Novak just rolled him. It wasn't like Carlos had expended a ton of energy. It was not like that at all.
Yeah, well, we're on grass versus clay. Inevitably, the rallies were not going to be as long. And plus, he was just very sharp. And Carlos was going for it earlier in points, too, and missing. Yeah. So that's why. But you're absolutely right. Not as taxing. The rallies were better at Roland Garros, frankly. But Djokovic was terrific. And yeah, I can see why you said that at the beginning of the second set. And yet, there was big pressure on Carlos because he knew how crucial the second set would be. And they both did, because Djokovic wants to blow it open. He knows if he can get to 2-0, he's going to be unstoppable. And Carlos is determined to get his teeth into this match. And he immediately broke Novak, got up 2-love. Novak gets it right back, even though Carlos had a game point. So now we're on serve the rest of the way after those second and third games with the service breaks. They both held. There were some tough games that they held. The set ended up lasting about 90 minutes. It was remarkable. And then we go to the tiebreak. And we all know Novak had won 15 in a row at the majors. And he even talked about it after his semifinal when he closed out Sinner in a tiebreak, about how he knew his opponents were aware. It was helping him, and it was also a boost to him that his opponents were very cognizant of what he was doing in these tiebreaks. So sure enough, Djokovic out to a 3-love lead in that tiebreak. Carlos made a backhand down the line error long, and then Novak hit 2 unreturnable first serves, which was not easy against Carlos that day, but he managed it for 3-love. And you thought he was going to close it. That early lead usually is enough for him. But Carlos then won both his service points, and Novak threw in probably an ill-advised drop shot into the net. So it's 3-all, but Djokovic didn't concede another service point after that, on his way to a 6-5 lead.
Yes. Carlos
is serving at 5-6. Djokovic makes a really good first serve return, and Carlos answers with a deep backhand, but not hard hit. Plenty of time for Novak with his perfect, that impeccable preparation to turn those shoulders and get ready to hit the cross-court backhand. And the next thing you know, he's hit it into the net tape. And he was astounded that he had missed that shot. He spoke about it afterwards. He said, Carlos hit a shot that was long, meaning long in the court, not out. But meaning he had a lot of length on the shot. But he said, he thought it was a slightly irregular bounce, but he said, no way should he have missed the shot. And he's very disappointed changing ends, having squandered the set point on that. And what does he do on the next point? Gets into another rally and misses an easier backhand into the net, and then loses the set when he tries to serve and volley, and Carlos hit a beautiful down the line backhand return winner. So just like that, from 6-5 set point for Djokovic, it's Alcaraz 8-6 in the breaker. And instead of being 2 sets to love Djokovic, which would have been probably an insurmountable lead, it's now a set all. It's a brand new match. And
Carlos echoed your thoughts. He said if Novak won that second set tiebreaker, it would have been really, really tough for me to win that match, obviously. A couple things that we had not seen previously in Novak's incredible runs in 15-0 in tiebreaks in Grand Slams. You referred to 2, I counted 3. You referred to 2 neutral rally backhand misses at 5-6 when he had the set point and at 6-6. He missed an earlier one, another backhand earlier in the tiebreak too. 3 unforced errors that you just never see from Novak in that type of circumstance.
No, that's what I was talking about when I said he hit an ill-advised drop shot. That was the other backhand miss. It was a backhand drop. So I did mention that. And that was surprising. It was not a good choice. You could see that Carlos was onto it, by the way, that even if it had gone over, Carlos was in a good position to chase it down and win the point.
And Steve, we talk about Novak's streaks of 15-0 in tiebreakers. We didn't even mention the streaks of not having an unforced error in tiebreakers. He had a crazy streak with 0 unforced errors for a while there.
That's true. That's true. In Paris, he did with 55 points and none. He made a few unforced errors during maybe 4 or 5 total, possibly in the Wimbledon tiebreaks. But
just seeing him in the final in the second set, missing some neutral ball rallies that he's so solid in tiebreakers. That was disappointing to him.
Yes, absolutely. And he was very disappointed in himself, very, very upset with himself, and didn't understand it. It came out of nowhere. And when he missed the second one, he looked up at Ivanisevic and as if to say, what in the world is going on here? How did I do that? Not trying to blame Goran, but just furious with himself. And so that's just so I think if you gave him those 2 points to play over, particularly the first one when he's at set point and trying to close it out, he wouldn't have missed that back. He could have played that point 1,000 more times and not missed that shot.
I agree. And he's just so solid in those most important points of matches.
Oh yeah, and probably going on to win that point, I suspect, because that's when he gets into the lockdown mode, and he's just going to keep getting every ball back deep. And there was tremendous pressure on Carlos if Novak does that. So, all right, so then we go to the set 3, David, and you could see early on, right off in the first game, that Djokovic was not in a good state of mind. He was making some more errors, and it was clear in his expression and his demeanor that he was a very unhappy man, understandably. It's just that usually he can recover better than that. But this was it was so glaring, David, the errors that he made and the importance of those points, that I think he was replaying it in his mind. I think, and I really believe that would put him in the 1-3 hole. And then they had a 13 deuce game with Novak serving at 1-3, 27 minutes, 13 deuces. He loses that game.
Steve, I know someone who wasn't watching it live. They were looking on their phone. They thought it must have rained and they closed the roof because the live scoring did not change for so long.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. That's funny. That's very amusing. No. So then once that happened, Djokovic he only won a few more points the rest of the set. He quickly dropped the set from there. I think at that point, being 2 breaks down, he wanted to get it over with. So it was no big deal when he's serving at 1-5 saying, I've had it with this set. And then he took a bathroom break. He comes back and he had Carlos love 30, but then he had to get out at 15-40 himself, and he did it. But then finally for 3-2 in the 5th game, he breaks Carlos, and that really seemed to propel him. And he serves his way to a 5-3 lead, and then breaks Carlos again, who serves two double faults.
I thought that last game was important for Carlos because you want to start, if you can, start serving first in the 5th set. And for him to get broken a second time, the last game of that set, now you're going to always be playing behind. If people are obvious, if Novak is holding serve, you're always going to be a game behind. So you really want to try to buckle down and at least hold that last service game in the 4th set. If Novak serves it out, fine, you at least start serving in the 5th. That did not happen.
absolutely right. But for some reason, I think Carlos, frankly, was getting physically and mentally weary at the end of that fourth set, and that may have caused the doubles. And his focus was gone, and he looked to me like he was very depleted. And then he made a little move on Djokovic's serve in the first game of the fifth, but Djokovic got held on from break point down. And then came the next most critical point of the match.
The 30-40 point.
Yeah, and Djokovic opened up the court beautifully. He pulled Carlos wide on the forehand, then hit the cross-court backhand with plenty of margin, but made Carlos cover a lot of court. Then Novak came in on a perfect forehand down the line approach. Probably the best approach he made the whole match, because there were times he came in, David, I thought, with too much topspin, and it just gave Carlos too much time to set up the pass. This was perfect. All Carlos could do was throw up a lob. He didn't put it up very high. So Djokovic, who was a bit hesitant on his overhead anyway, decided he's going to play it as a swing volley, a drive volley.
Well, you look at the replay several times now, Steve, and it looks like Novak hesitated a little bit whether he was going to let it bounce. He didn't know if it was going to go in.
He did.
Maybe it was an overhead versus swinging volley. He looks like he hesitates, and he missed that swinging volley by quite a bit.
Well, he hit it in the net tape. I
didn't think he did hit it in the net tape, but
I watched it again, and
I thought it was lower than that, but I'll revisit it.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. The bottom line is, what I would say is, I don't think he was ever going to let it drop and hit a ground stroke. The real decision was
like bounce it and hit an overhead. I was going to say.
Yeah, and I don't blame him for. One of my friends felt that he should have gone in for the overhead. A couple of them thought so. I don't blame him for going swing volley, but I would have rather seen him really tee off. I mean, maybe it's dangerous to go cross court, but there's also a lot more margin on your shot. And if you hit it hard enough and well enough, even Carlos, as quick as he is not going to get to it. But he couldn't resist going down the line because he saw Carlos moving. So he thought anything good down the line going behind him was going to work. And it would have. But that was so crucial. He looked at his corner again, David, after that point. And I remember sitting there looking at him from our vantage point in the center court, watching him staring up at it again, like he could not believe that he hadn't converted there. Now, if he converts there, after all the trials and tribulations of not taking the 2-set lead, he would be at 2-love in the fifth, feeling very good about his chances.
And I don't think Novak relinquishes that lead. 2-0 in the fifth of a Wimbledon final. No. I think he goes on and wins his 8th Wimbledon final.
Yeah.
That being said, that did not happen, and Carlos had a huge hold in that game.
Oh yeah, and then he proceeds to play a very good game to break Djokovic. At 30-all, Novak erred off the forehand. It was one of those returns that Carlos was making where he was just basically blocking or guiding his returns down the middle of the court as deep as he could and giving Novak no pace. It was an interesting combination, that with his explosive ground strokes, that sometimes just trying to slow it down and make Novak come up with something. So he did that at 30-all, and Novak kind of reached for the forehand. He didn't time it well. He didn't get up to it well. And that put him down break point. And then Novak slipped on the next point, but then managed to make an approach, and Carlos passed him clean. So suddenly it's 2-1. And that's when Novak smacked his racket into the net post. He was so frustrated because
where was your vantage point with that? Where were your seats compared to where the match was being played? And where were you when you saw his frustration?
Yeah, well, we were the opposite end from the royal box. So, but we had a good view of the umpire's chair. You could see it very well. We're behind the court also. And I understood his frustration because he's thinking as he's going to the chair, I should be up a break and I'm down a break. And that made him even angrier about having blown the opportunity for 2-love. Now, let me say this about the rest of the set. Be that as it may, no doubt in my mind that Djokovic should have broken. He should have made the swing volley. He should have had the break. He played that point perfectly. He gets the break. He wins the match. We're in accord. But from that juncture on, suddenly Carlos was a revitalized figure. And the way he played the rest of the way was spectacular. I give him completely full marks because he served so brilliantly, closing games out with aces. He just wasn't giving Novak a chance. But
Steve, let me talk about that. I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on that, because throughout the fifth set, with the exception of the last game, he served 6 points and he made 6 first serves. Me watching it, I thought he was not getting a lot of his first serves in, but his second serve was so effective. That was saving him. And then when he served for the championship, man, did he raise it in all 6 points that he
Oh yeah, no, he did.
serve.
Oh, his second serve was very good. It was very good. But he had his energy back. That made a big difference. Suddenly he was like the Carlos of the second and third sets again.
It's almost like you have a second life. I mean, you're one shot away from being down a break 2-0 in the fifth, and it's almost lights out. And now
we're talking about a 4-hour, 42-minute match. So I was impressed that Carlos found that extra verb, found that inspiration, because he just wouldn't really, and Novak was not returning badly, but he just served far too well, Carlos, first and second serves. And then the match game that you mentioned was just remarkable, because despite all those first serves, Novak managed to get it back to 30-all.
Well, the first point, Carlos, I think, executed it perfectly, missed the drop shot. And then the second point, he went back to the drop shot and won the point with it.
Yeah, and by the way, that was a difference, because earlier in the match, Novak, I think that was the only area where he physically he still had a lot of in reserve, but he had decided at that point he was not going to chase those drop shots. Earlier in the first 2-3 sets, he got to a lot of them impressively. He read some of them, and he'd scamper forward and make a pretty good approach, and he won his fair share of points off the Alcaraz drop shot, which was impressive to me. But by that stage in the match game, he wasn't going to chase that, and Carlos hit a perfect one the second time after missing the first one. Then he made an incredible backhand volley, lunging off a backhand pass from Novak cross court that was hit well. So and then a couple more first serves and it's over. And I just think that was also impressive, because Carlos talked, David, about how hard it is to close out big matches because in the Medvedev match in the semis, he lost his serve twice in the third set from a breakup, and he hadn't lost it the whole match. And he said afterwards, closing out these matches is very tough. But he showed no signs of frailty against Djokovic, which is remarkable, that it wouldn't hit him then. It just didn't hit him at all. He served it out as if he was playing a match in the park against one of his buddies back in Barcelona, and there was nothing more riding on the outcome than bragging rights. This is a Wimbledon final, his very first one. This is his second Grand Slam final. He
hasn't won the French Open yet. If I told you 2 years ago he'd win Wimbledon before Roland Garros, you'd look at me like I was crazy.
But, he had surprised. This all happened so fast, as he said later. He wins Queen's Club after Roland Garros. That was unexpected, but not shocking. So, but that gave him a lot of confidence. Then he had some struggles during Wimbledon. And Nicholas Jarry gave him what took him to 7-5 in the fourth, and probably should have been in a fifth set, because he almost went up 2 breaks in the fourth. And then he was down a set to Berrettini, and he came back strong. So he had a few struggles, but this all happened so quickly. And for him to suddenly find himself sitting at the changeover at 5-4 in the fifth against Novak Djokovic after this tumultuous match, and have the poise and the perspicacity to go out there and serve the match out in that fashion. And Novak, that was the first thing Novak mentioned in the presentation ceremony. I made you serve it out, and he lauded him for doing such a great job. And by the way, I would say,
first serves. 6 for 6 first serves.
I just want to add to that, David, that Djokovic's sportsmanship afterwards, again in the presentation ceremony, was just outstanding. And I mean, Carlos was maybe not quite as good. Carlos was fine, but he's much newer to these.
He's young. I think he was in shock. He didn't know what was going on. Yeah.
He did fine, but Djokovic, it was a shining moment for him, I thought, because he acknowledged how disappointed he was. He started losing it a bit when he talked about his son being able to smile.
He referred to the 2019 final with Roger, how he was down 2 match points.
Well, that was a good, healthy way for him to look at it, to try to say, yeah, but I've won a few of these that maybe I shouldn't have won. So today I think I should have won and I lost. It was a very good philosophical approach to it all, and healthy, I think. But he was, despite his disappointment, he really lauded Carlos, as he did in the press conference as well. What I'm hoping comes out of this, David, is because somebody asked him about it, and he joked about how, rivalry, but he doesn't know how much longer he's going to be around. But he'll be around, in my view, at least. I'd be really surprised if he didn't play through 2025. After that, I don't know. But I see him absolutely through next year and probably through 25. So in that span, in that span, I'm hoping that's when we get this rivalry between these two. We get
100%, Steve. And I hope they play in the finals in New York. And to reiterate your point, I think Carlos is going to motivate Novak for the next couple of years.
Yeah.
The killer, and Novak has spoken about getting all the records, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. Because I think it's slipping, because every year it's going to get harder. You know how difficult it is to win the first two slams of the year. Novak was a clear favorite to win the third slam of the year this year. That calendar Grand Slam, he's had it one match away in 2021. He put himself in a great position in 2023. He was heavily favored to win this tournament. Has that slipped? I mean, he's got a small window, like you said, maybe 1 or maybe 2 years left to try that. Has that gone by the wayside? Or
I'm surprised he got this opportunity. I think it's a magnificent achievement that he did do it. And it's still an incredible year when you look at somebody.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your answer. I want the listeners to hear the answer. Do you think it slipped through the wayside, or do you think he's still?
No, I do. I do think it slipped through the wayside, because I think it's remarkable that he got to this halfway point for the second time in 3 years. The odds on that were very slim. And
in 2021, he was 27 out of 28 in Grand Slam matches. That's insane.
Yeah.
Insane.
Yeah, and got within that one match, and unfortunately he just kind of froze. He was really very apprehensive in the Medvedev match, and just
so you don't see him getting in a position to really be somewhat close to them in the next 2 years.
No, but I think, by the way, just to get back to this match, I think that also was why it was so doubly painful, that he knew, had he won it, it was going to take him to New York with a chance for the Grand Slam, and there's a good chance he might pull it off. Now, I would add this. I think now, when he's able to reflect a little bit and realize it got away, he'll leave his disappointment behind him, and now he will go to New York thinking more along the lines of, look, I've won the US Open 3 times, but I've lost 6 finals there too. That's crazy for me. I owe it to myself to win another US Open. And
I think his determination will be as strong as ever. Yeah. I think the disappointment is that he may have seen the calendar slam. I'll ask you this question. I asked David, I don't know if it'll either happen, but I'll ask you this. Do you think, who has a better chance of winning a calendar slam in the next 2 years? Novak Djokovic or Carlos Alcaraz? I don't think either will do it, but who has a better chance in the next 2 years?
That's hard to say. I don't see it for Carlos that soon. If Carlos is ever going to do it, I think I see it being more likely that, even more mature as he is now, which is hard to imagine, by the way, because what 20-year-old plays with the maturity that he does and carries himself that way. But I would see it more likely for Carlos to give himself a shot when he's 24, 25, not in the next 2 years. So I guess I would still say Djokovic, but slim, very slim.
And I'll tell you this, if Carlos wins Australia, it's just shocking to everybody that he will have won 3 slams, and the one slam he hasn't won is Roland Garros. You remember Andre Agassi? He was great. He made the semis of the French in 88, and in 90 he makes the finals. And French Open, he didn't win it till 19. What was it? What year was
99?
1999, right? That was the last one of his career slam to win it.
Yeah. So, Carlos, listen, he was in the quarters. He lost to Zverev a year ago. He's in the semis this year, played very well, and then got full body cramps against Novak at a set all. It'll happen for him. He'll get on the board at Royal. I wouldn't worry too much about that. But winning all 4 in a year at his age, I don't know. I would give him a little more time if before he's ready to do something like that. But I'm
with you. I don't think either of them will do it in the next years. But it was interesting comparison, because I think Novak had the prime opportunity in 2021, and then he set himself up perfectly this year. And that's got to be, like you said, it's just got to be terribly disappointing to him, knowing that it's going to be really difficult the next 2 years.
Well, because he's established a well-deserved reputation as the greatest clutch player in tennis. And it's always been one of the secrets to success is how he plays under pressure. So for him to lose in that fashion, to lose the second set on a bad error on a set point, and then to make another flagrant mistake with a break point for 2-love in the 5th, those two, it irks him no end. He can accept somebody making great shots on the break points and beating him with winners or just forced errors, but not that. Right. So he's not accustomed to it, and we're not accustomed to seeing him
play those critical points and just missing a neutral ball rally. He just doesn't do that.
No, he doesn't do it. And he knew at that moment how important that, he knew how hard he'd worked for that set for an hour and a half, and what a difference it was going to make between winning and losing it, and how it was going to really be backbreaking for Carlos. Not that Carlos was going to quit, but to be down. And as you say, Carlos acknowledged that if he'd gone down 2 sets, it would have been a long road back.
Let me ask you from your perspective, because again, you were there. After the first set, I know you didn't think it was over, but did you feel on the court, in the atmosphere, that people are like, oh boy, this may be quick. This may be a rout by Novak. And then I'll ask you, after the second set, was it just electric that everybody knew that now we have a match?
Yeah, no, it was. But then you quickly saw how the third set unfolded. I think nobody was expecting that set to be so decisive for Carlos. I thought going into it would probably be a close set, but yes, I don't think sitting in the press row that people, and any of us who watched Carlos, we're saying, oh no, this is over. And also, I've seen too many matches where if somebody wins, a top player against another top player wins a 6-love or 6-1 set, either way, and it's that easy. It can weigh on the mind, because you're wondering whether you can sustain that level, and then the other guy's going to lift his game, which is exactly what happened. But despite all that, despite going down the break, Djokovic, he gets the break back and goes to the tiebreak and has that chance. So I think he was devastated by that. There's no doubt about it. But I do think he'll get over this, David. I think he's mature enough, and at 36, and that philosophical comment he made about even Steven, and I somehow won the Roger match in 19 is very healthy outlook to say, okay, these things happen in life, and sometimes you do things that are harmful to yourself that you never expect you could have done, but you have to move past it, and you still know that that's uncharacteristic of you. If this happened to him 2 or 3 more times in the next year, I think he'd be deeply concerned.
Yes. And give credit to Carlos, because he didn't tell us specifically what he did differently, but he prepared mentally way different from this match in Roland Garros. Again, he didn't tell us specifically what he did, but credit to him and his team for handling the situation better than they did in Roland Garros, because more than anyone, definitely more than me, Steve. Going out Wimbledon, the aura, it's so quiet. There's plenty of it is the grandest stage there is in tennis. It's not easy. Your nerves are going crazy, and whatever that he did and his team did, full credit to Carlos Alcaraz.
Yeah. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that in his career, David, Djokovic has won, when he's won the first set of any match, best of 3 or 5, his record is 925 wins, 41. This was the 41st defeat. And he's only lost a few Grand Slam finals after winning the first set, a couple to Wawrinka and 1 to Nadal, 2 to Wawrinka at the French and US Opens, and to Rafa at the French as well. It's rare in Grand Slam finals that he wins the first set and loses the match, and it's just rare, period, to stop this guy. And so that's more what I was thinking about after the first set, frankly. It was like, I'm thinking, oh boy, this is just what he wanted. He's got the first set. We
always say, you lose the first set, you got to win 3 of the next 4 against the likes of a Novak Djokovic. That's a lot of work that's got to be done to win this match.
Yeah, it absolutely was. But I listen, it was a memorable, hard fought, first-rate contest. You and I were talking off air, we might say, and I would just say this: no, I do not put it up there with Federer Nadal 08, the epic that Rafa won on the edge of darkness 9-7 in the 5th after winning the first 2 sets and dropping the next 2 in tie breaks. I don't put it up there with Federer Radek, which was 16-14 in the 5th and an excellent contest the following year, or Borg McEnroe in 80, or any of these other Wimbledon epics. But I do say it was a great final. It was a great final.
The competitiveness of the final was there. The highest of quality, the highest of highest quality. I agree with you. I don't think it was at the matches that you're referring to.
No, not consistently. Not consistently, because Carlos's level was not. Novak's was in the first set, but Carlos's wasn't. Carlos's level was quite high in the third. Novak's was not. Djokovic played a nice solid fourth. Carlos looked like he was wilting. So they both played, what I would say is they both played really well at the same time in the second and fifth sets. The second and fifth sets stand out to me in different ways because we saw them both pushing hard and reaching a high level at pretty much the same time. And that's why you had a tiebreaker in the second. And that's why the fifth was hanging in the balance. And that just came down to that one crucial break that Carlos got after Novak squandered his opportunity. But yeah, the level set in, set out, that fluctuated some. But boy, the fans certainly got their money's worth. And it makes the mouth water to think what these guys could do if they did meet in the US Open final and then hopefully again in Australia at the start of next year.
100%. That would be something. I think everybody's hoping for that, and especially the one coming up in New York. Okay, let's move on to the day before women's final. And I said at the beginning, disheartening, and I know this is going to sound biased. And look, I'll say it up front, and you can balance whatever I say out, Steve. Please feel free. But I was hoping, and a lot of tennis fans were hoping, that Ons Jabeur would win her first slam. This was her third slam. Second at Wimbledon. It was an interesting final. It was kind of weird. This was the first one where she was heavily favored, and she's playing Marketa Vondrousova, and we'll talk about Ons's draw leading up to it. She had beaten Bianca Andreescu, Petra Kvitova. She beat the defending Wimbledon champ, Rybakina, and the Sabalenka. Those are four players who have won slams leading up to the final. Here she is heavily favored. And she comes out in the first set, Steve, up 2-0. She has chances in the next two games to go up 4-0. I'm thinking she should be up 4-0. It's not. It's 2-2. And I'm like, She then rights the ship. She's now up 4-2. And then again, 4-4, Steve. And now I'm thinking to myself, okay, she's had two opportunities to blow this set wide open. She hasn't. And Marketa Vondrousova gets one opportunity. What does she do? She capitalizes it and wins the first set 6-4. Vondrousova, go ahead.
Just a quick interjection. It was also 16 of 18 points for that she won after Ons led 4-2. So it was clearly a collapse there. An incredibly one-sided in those four games.
15 unforced errors from Ons in that first set, Steve. Second set, Vondrousova keeps her game rolling. She's up a break at 1-0, serving 40 loves, Steve. Ons fights, breaks her, then holds, then breaks her again, 3-1. We're like, okay, let's see what happens here. She's given her chance. Ons has had chances in both sets here. Vondrousova breaks her back, holds 3-3, 4-4, gets the 4-4. Vondrousova breaks Ons, go 5-4, serves it out. 35 unforced errors for Ons. 2 sets, not 3 sets. 35 unforced errors, Steve. I want to ask you from Ons' perspective, was it the pressure? We know who she's representing, her country and all that, and we all love Ons. We do. Was it the pressure of the final? Was there some wear and tear of the 4 past slam champions that I listed previously? I don't know. What'd you see from it?
David, I honestly don't think it was the accumulation of the 4 great wins. I think it was much more about not wanting to let her country down, knowing what the consequences would be if she could win, the positive impact it could have on her part of the world, and wanting it so badly, wanting to feel like, okay, this is my 3rd Grand Slam final. I lost to Rybakina a year ago. It was slightly unexpected, but she served really well. I lost to the best player in the world, Iga Swiatek, at the US Open. I can't apologize for that. But she figures this one, even though she'd lost to this player the last couple of times, she still felt, I have to be able to beat her. And she didn't mean that with any personal disrespect, but it was just a matchup that she liked on that court. And she emotionally, she just broke down. So
so tight, Steve, right? You could see her playing. She was so tight. Did you feel like how I felt when in the first set when she was up 2-0, then it got 2-2, then it was 4-2? Like, did you think she was riding the ship and she was going to win that first set?
Yeah, I hated the way she threw it away to the 2-love game because it was a chance to really get moving. But then when she went
4-0, Steve, she had game points and break points. It should have been 4-0.
Yeah, and I thought she won't you're right. It could well have been 4-love, but I didn't worry about that. When she got to 4-2, I thought, okay, she's going to close it here.
Yes.
She had her early chance. Now she's built the advantage again. She'll get this done. And it's bewildering to me because
it was tough to watch, Steve. It was tough to watch.
Very hard to watch. You know, you just see her almost cramping up. She couldn't follow through sometimes on her shots. She just would stop.
So tight.
It was like she was watching herself in some kind of a freeze frame. It was awful. It was awful to sit there and observe all this and know that she was not doing herself justice. And with all due respect to Marketa, I as great as she was, and as well as she played throughout the tournament and the number of good wins that she had, I don't think she's going to replicate this. I think she's the kind of player that's going to go deep into other slams, but I don't see her winning one again.
And going into this match, Steve, I also said Ons was going to control the outcome of this match. And what I mean by that is she is either going to win this match on her terms or lose this match on her terms. And unfortunately, the errors just crept up. She couldn't loosen up the shoulders. She couldn't let it fly. I mean, credit to Marketa, right? You get a player that gives you opportunity and opportunity. You have to take advantage, which she did. I know Ons talked about talking to Kim Clijsters after the match. Kim lost her first 3 or first 4, she clarified. Ons will win one, and how sweet it will be when she does win one. But she said this was the most painful. This is so far the most painful loss of her career, based on what you said, you know, being the heavy favorite. She felt going in, she was going to win this match. And it's in any sport, it's so hard to get to the final, to the championship game, whatever sport there is. If you're going to lose, you at least want to you want to lose playing your A game, letting it fly. To get to the final, especially in Ons' case, to beat those 4 champions on her way there and to play not even close to your potential, that has to be devastating. Again, if you play great and you lose, you can kind of live with that. But to go to bed at night saying, you know what, I was a shell of myself, that's tough to do in a championship in any sport.
Yeah, and she didn't have to feel that way about either of the previous 2 Grand Slams.
Correct.
Played a pretty decent Wimbledon final and not badly against Iga at the Open. I will say this, David. Yes, she's going to get more opportunities. I share your view that she surely will get on the board someday, but I don't think you're going to see her get the number of opportunities that Kim Clijsters did. I think it's a smaller window. And I sure hope that when she plays Grand Slam final number 4, whenever that is, that she can get it done there and get the monkey off her back. We also know that Andy Murray and his coach Yvonne Lendl lost their first 4 Grand Slam finals, and Andy turned it around and ended up winning a US Open and 2 Wimbledons for 3 majors. Yvonne turned it around and won 8 majors. So it can be done. But I worry that with the competition that Ons is going to confront, the number of top players, and look how hard it was to get to this final. I mean, in the semifinals against Sabalenka, she was down to set and 4-2.
Yep.
Sabalenka had not lost her serve, and Ons did a terrific job of turning that around and winning in 3 sets.
She lost the first set in a few of her matches.
Yeah, exactly. And she will, yes, the opportunities will be there, but I don't think they're going to be that numerous. So I just hope the next 2 or 3 that come along that she pounces.
Yeah, and Steve, to reflect on some of the Americans that played, we had hit on Chris Eubanks on the previous episode. I mean, to take he beat Tsitsipas, to take Medvedev to 5 sets, incredible 2 weeks for incredible 2 weeks event for him. Also, girl we both have talked about, we like her game, Jessica Pegula. She played Marketa. She was up 1 point away from being up 5-1 in the 3rd set, Steve. She missed a golden opportunity of achieving her first semi in a slam.
And she had won the 2nd set 6-2. So she had won 10 out of 13 games. She was on a tear. And yeah, that was very unfortunate that she couldn't quite close it out. And who knows what would have happened to her. She might have ended up in the finals. We'll never know. But yes, it was poignant and painful to watch Ons Jabeur lose that final. That's the bottom line for me. And she's so popular worldwide. She's so well liked among her fellow players. And the sport has grown to love her. The general public is well aware of her now in a way that they really weren't prior to Wimbledon last year. Now they're very familiar with Jabeur, but it just was I hated sitting there and observing this contest because I knew she was not coming close to doing herself justice.
That's hard. It's hard. All right. I know we spent most of our time obviously on the finals. You were there the whole week, Steve. The feelings on the grounds there, anything that really stood out to you that we have not talked about before we wrap this up? I mean, again, you were there from when you started there on Sunday. You flew in on Saturday. You were there Sunday to Sunday, so 7 days.
No, I mean, for one thing, usually we get over the course of the 2 weeks, there's at least 1 week of pretty hot weather. It didn't really happen this time. It was probably a little warmer the first week before I got there. Then there was the kind of constant decision-making that went back to the first day when Djokovic came out for his first round match, and what should have been a 15-minute delay to put up the roof turned into about an hour and a half. And I think that concerned the Wimbledon officials enough that they were making choices. They were trying to head things off. And if they had a weather report that there was rain coming at 4 o'clock and the match was starting at 3, they just didn't mess with it. And they put the roof up. And so that just brings me to the final. It was still pretty windy. We didn't talk about the wind.
We didn't. And I think that may have affected why some of the quality may not have been to some of those other matches that you referred to.
It did, because you could see Djokovic especially. I mean, it affected Carlos off the ground, and it affected Novak more with his service toss. So you could see that, and it would come and go. It would diminish and then pick up again. So and they did have a little bit of a brief shower about an hour before the final. I thought they were maybe going to just say, you know what, we're putting the roof up. And my feeling is, I have friends who disagree, but my feeling is just do it. I mean, the higher the quality of the tennis, the better. If you had the roof up for the men's final, the level would have been even higher for both players. So I just feel like, no, don't worry about the fact that it's technically an outdoor tournament. If there's a reason to use the roof for more than rain and use it for heat or wind, go ahead. That's my belief.
Yeah, that's interesting perspective. Well, this was fun. I know you're tired. You're dealing with jet lag right now. You just got off the plane. I appreciate you doing this. I'm glad you had another great week there. Again, you were there Sunday to Sunday. What is that? 8 days. I think I said 7. That's really 8 full days.
Yeah.
Glad you were able to attend. I know we got Newport going right now, a tournament that's near and dear to your heart. That's where you were inducted in the Hall of Fame back in 2017. And then after Newport, we start the summer hard court swing. And I mean, New York, even though Novak won't be going for the calendar slam, you know he will be determined. I think a lot of people would love to see a rematch of the Wimbledon final on a Sunday in New York. You're also going to see Ons Jabeur, see how she reacts to the disappointment of Wimbledon, see how far she can go to New York. And again, you got the big three on the women's side, right? Iga Swiatek, Sabalenka, Rybakina, they're all going to be itching to get far in that. And again, someone like Jessica Pegula, who we know she's going to get to the semis eventually. She missed a golden opportunity in this tournament. She's going to be eager to do really well in her home country slam.
Yeah, I'm with you across the board on everything you said. I just want to add that if you look back to last year, Djokovic, who of course couldn't play the US Open, did win Wimbledon. Carlos wins the Open. Carlos can't play Australia. Novak wins it. They meet in the semis of the French. It would have been better if they were in opposite halves, but Novak wins the French. Carlos comes back and wins Wimbledon. They clearly have emerged as without any doubt, as the 2 top players in the world. So to me, there's a reasonably good chance, given their respective levels, that they will meet in New York in the finals and end the Grand Slam season in style.
And tennis fans would all love to see that match once again. It would be a great rematch of just what occurred, around, I don't know, 30 hours ago. So with that said, Steve, get some rest. Thank you again for doing this. And tennis never sleeps. Newport, and then with a hard court season. So.
Oh yeah, and I'll be in Newport, by the way. I'm going back up to see the ceremonies and watch some of the tennis as well. I love doing that every year. So that's a fun weekend, you know. And it's the American grass court event.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Steve.
Thank you, David.